All right, well, thank you all for coming out on this beautiful fall afternoon. We've got a great crowd here, and we've got additional people online. So I want to introduce our speakers today. We have Corbin Kling here in person, as well as Austin Stone, remote from Colorado. They'll be giving themselves a more thorough description of what they do for Planet Labs, but they are customer support, customer success managers from Planet. And I've worked with Austin over the last couple of years. He's been sort of our dedicated contact at Planet to help us through any technical issues, but also sort of outline the improvements they've made over the years. And Corbin here may be familiar, as he was 2020 graduate from MEAS, and he worked with our center faculty fellow Paul Byrne. All right, and I also want to mention that we have access, or you all have access to Planet Labs through the funding made possible from MEAS, the Center for Geospatial Analytics, and as well as some of the grants that Dr. Chris Jones has been awarded over the years. So as we learn about Planet Labs today, keep in mind that if you don't already know, you can reach out to me for access to the system here. Right, and with that, I'll hand it off to Corbin.
Awesome, thanks, Zach. It's great to be here today in front of people again. Finally, I've been working remote for the past, I don't know, 3 years probably. So my name is Corbin. I did a PhD here from 2016 to 2020, working with Paul Byrne on planetary geology. And then I went off to the Smithsonian for a postdoc and then ended up at Planet, where I work for our federal subsidiary. So I work with all of our federal civilian agencies in the US government, and I also support some of our efforts in the defense and intelligence side of things. And so today, Austin is going to give you a great introduction to everything related to Planet and what you have access to, kind of our satellite systems. And then I'm going to jump into just a couple of cool science applications that we'd like to show off, and then also give a demo of Planet Explorer, which is our web-based platform to download data from. And so Austin, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and kick this off.
Sounds good. Thanks, Corbin, and thanks, Zach, for bringing us here today. So my name's Austin Stone. I'm a customer success manager here at Planet. I work primarily with all of our academic users. So for the universities that purchase a subscription to Planet data, I have the opportunity to work alongside with. And it's an awesome place to be. There's a great, there's a lot of innovation going on around the academic community and using our data for a number of applications. And I hope we'll present to you some of those opportunities throughout this presentation. I also have a remote sensing background, so primarily in agricultural remote sensing. So if there are any ag scientists on the call, feel free to reach out to me either through the chat or after the meeting if you have any ideas about using Planet data for agricultural work. But without further ado, I'd love to jump in and introduce you all to Planet. So here we go. So to kick things off, I would like to talk a little bit about Planet's mission. So Planet's mission statement is to image the whole world every day, making change visible, accessible, and actionable. And so over the past decade, Planet's been developing a bunch of small satellites where together the constellation is able to capture images of the Earth every day. And we provide that data to you in an online platform where you can all visualize the imagery and download it for your needs. So we're really being able to accomplish this goal and making that data accessible to you all and actionable. So to break down the constellations that Planet is currently operating, there's two major constellations to be in mind, to keep in mind. So that's our Dove satellites, which are equipped with our PlanetScope sensors. We have about 200 of these in orbit. This is the workhorse of our constellation. It's a sensor that's always on, capturing images of the Earth at a near daily cadence. The spatial resolution of these images are roughly 3 to 4 square meters. And they are equipped with multispectral sensors. So most recently, we've started collecting global daily coverage using our Super Dove PlanetScope sensor, which is equipped with 8 spectral bands. So that includes coastal blue, 2 unique green bands, yellow, red edge, and near infrared. And I'll show you a spectral breakdown of those later in this presentation. We also have a high resolution satellite called SkySat. We have 21 of these in orbit right now, and they capture images at roughly a 50 centimeter pixel resolution. And so these are also equipped with multispectral sensors. They have 5 bands, which are RGB, NIR, and panchromatic. And so to give you an idea of how these constellations orbit around Earth and capture images at the rate that they can, this little visualization shows how the constellations are working together. As the Earth is rotating, our PlanetScope sensors are in that sun synchronous orbit, and together those 200 plus satellites are able to capture at that near daily rate. And similar to that, we have our SkySat satellites also in a sun synchronous orbit, albeit different little pockets of satellites kind of orbiting orbiting Earth at different orbits. So together, those satellites being able to task images upon a customer's request, we're able to capture specific areas of the Earth multiple times a day, which is really exciting. I always have a hard time getting off this graphic, but it's just such a cool one to show. Okay, so to kind of put things into perspective of that near daily cadence, this is a representation showing what a typical month in Brazil on this plantation that Landsat and Sentinel cover. And not to say that Landsat and Sentinel aren't valuable remotely sensed products, because one thing that we do at Planet is we totally encourage and support the use of multi-sensor or multi-data applications with our imagery. We know that our imagery is definitely a complementary data set to much more unique data sets that are out there in specific areas. But this is a great representation to show that in the month of July 2021, we're seeing that this area, naturally a cloudy area being in the tropics, is being hindered by the amount of cloud cover. And so throughout this entire month, we can see that really there's only one true cloud-free day, and a few others that might be usable if you're looking for some sort of composited image, but those clouds are being kind of a tough target. So thinking about things through the Planet lens, we're able to capture imagery almost every single day. So this is a breakdown of imagery being captured by PlanetScope and SkySat. And what it does is it gives you the opportunity to have many more observations. Whereas in the past, using Landsat and Sentinel, you might get that one observation if the cloud cover isn't cooperating with you. But being able to capture at that near daily cadence gives you that opportunity to capture more observations throughout a given time period. So I'm going to take a deeper dive into PlanetScope, because this is actually the main satellite sensor that, or the data product that you all have access to. So this slide it's a lot, there's a lot going on here, but I want to touch on a few really important stats here. So One of the really cool things with that constellation and that 200 plus planet scope constellation, we have 4 million images being captured every single day, which is a lot of data. It's a lot of images. And this is just capturing images over the Earth's landmass. So we have 300 million square kilometers of 300 million square kilometers of area covered throughout the Earth every single day. So 4 million images, 300 million square kilometers of imagery being captured. That's 10 times over any commercial and public sources combined. And it's more than twice the total landmass on Earth, which is an absurd amount. One other stat on here that I just think is really important for you all to be aware of is this one stat down at the bottom left. We have an average of 2,000 images for every point on Earth's landmass. And what I mean by that is we have a ginormous archive of data. So when you pick a point on planet Earth and you want to drill down, there are on average 2,000 observations, which is really, really unique. And to talk about the archive a little bit more, this is a rough timeline of when our satellites were in orbit. So one thing to note is that there are 3 different generations of our PlanetScope sensors aboard the Dove satellites. So we have Dove C, which is also known as Dove Classic. This was our initial build for the Dove satellites. They started operating and collecting imagery in 2014, and they have recently been retired earlier this year. But they were collecting data from 2014 all the way up to 2022. And it wasn't until 2017 that we had enough satellites in our constellation in orbit to collect consistent global daily coverage. So anything before 2017, it's a little inconsistent in terms of how much data is available at that near daily cadence. But 2017 onward, we've been able to capture near daily coverage pretty consistently. We also had Dove R, which was our 2nd generation Dove build, and I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. But most recently in 2020, we launched our Super Dove satellite, which is equipped with that 8 bands of data. So historically, we've had access to 4 bands, just RGB and NIR. But now with our Super Dove satellite in orbit, we have access to the 8 bands. So, and I'll actually, great segue, I'll talk about this, the spectral resolutions of these. And one thing to note too with the Super Dove is we have global daily coverage of this satellite starting earlier this year. So to talk a little bit about the different specs between each sensor, I'll start here with Dove Classic, which was our first build. So one thing to note is we have a little reference up here with Sentinel-2. So this is the spectral makeup of Sentinel-2's multispectral instrument. Dove Classic, as you can see, the bands are much wider than what you would see with Sentinel-2. So as we were collecting data, we noticed that there was a bit of an inconsistency in the ability to be able to use Dove Classic data along with something like Sentinel or Landsat. And that's just because of these wide ranges in which we were capturing information in. So to address that, we built Dove R, which was the 2nd generation Dove satellite. And what you can see is that we made these bandwidths much narrower. So we're becoming a bit more standardized to something that everyone is accustomed to in Sentinel. And so to further that, we then built the Super Dove to help improve and build out more spectral capabilities. So we added 4 additional bands. And I think one band that people are using quite a bit more with this new addition is the red edge. I know red edge is pretty important for some agricultural use cases and some other vegetation analyses. So the addition of this red edge band has had a very positive feedback, but we also have 3 other bands in yellow, green 1, and coastal blue. And of course, we're looking to the academic community to see if there's any additional utility using those bands beyond the bands that we're all accustomed to using. Okay, so I'm going to jump into a few images that I feel like are really striking with our satellites. And so earlier this year, we started capturing images of the Tonga volcano out in the Pacific with our SkySat satellite. So we had been working with some NASA scientists who found out that there was some volcanic activity occurring at this volcano. So we started collecting imagery. So this is January 7th, earlier this year. And not too long after an eruption occurred at this volcano and basically took away the entire landmass of that volcano. Now it's completely underwater. So being able to monitor these types of environmental changes are really important to understanding how we can mitigate any impacts in the future or plan ahead for events like this. And so just to connect things from like an environmental level and a global level, that anytime something like this happens, sometimes there are reactions. So off the coast of Australia, due to the Tonga eruption, a tsunami was triggered and actually tipped over a tanker that had 6,000 barrels of crude oil and actually spilled in the ocean right here. And so being able to capture images at this rate allowed us to see and quantify this type of impact. Another big event, this was early 2021. This is the Whirlou Bushfire in Western Australia. So this is prior to the fire, and this is just one day later. And you can kind of see how the fire has rapidly spread throughout this landscape. For my fellow ag scientists here, these are a bunch of smallholder farms in India. And one thing that you can see, it's just a quick little 3-image segment here, but you can start to see some of these smallholder farms beginning to till up their smallholder farms and prepare for the growing season. So it's hard to see, but you can kind of see it grow in this image. And then lastly, this happened pretty recently. There was a big rainfall event in central Italy, and this rainfall event triggered a big sediment plume off the western coast of Italy. So this is a couple of days prior to that rainfall event. And then this is one of the initial days after the rainfall event, where you can see a bunch of sediment building up into the river and the river discharging it into the coastline. And you can kind of see how impactful this discharge is. Just a couple of days after this, all of that sediment is being spread all along the coastline. And I actually took these images and I zoomed out a little bit further and to see how big of a rainfall event this had an impact on. And you can see a system of rivers from this big rainfall event actually triggered many sediment plumes across that coastline. Okay, so those were some of the images that I found really interesting. And now I want to talk to you all about the platforms that we have, platforms that you'll have access to, and how you can take advantage of Planet data. So the first thing is, what do you have access to? So you have access to our PlanetScope and RapidEye archive. So that includes all the historical 4-band information that I mentioned before, but it also includes all the 8-band information that we've been collecting over the past year and a half. That data can be downloaded as a visual product, just like an RGB product, but it could also be downloaded as top of atmosphere reflectance or surface reflectance, depending on your needs. You also have access to PlanetScope base maps, which are these mosaics. So if you're doing land scale work, these are really useful. I do want to say we do have global base maps, but they are only visual. So if you need any sort of backdrop or anything like that, these global visual base maps are really useful. If you're doing visual analysis, those are also pretty useful. There are some surface reflectance base maps included, but they are not global. That's just something that Planet can't do at this time, is create those global surface reflectance base maps. But there are some select base maps that surface reflectance base maps that are available to you. And when I say surface reflectance, it includes 4 bands, so the RGB and NIR. So if you wanted to calculate something like NDVI, those SR base maps would be really useful for you. And some of the platforms that you have access to are Planet Explorer, which Corbin's going to be giving you a demonstration of later today. We also have our base maps viewer where you can go in and visualize some of the base maps and download some of those. Planet APIs, so if you're interested in downloading imagery in bulk, this is a great platform for that. We have a bunch of integrations. So if you're using ArcGIS or Qgis, you can pretty much plug in Planet Explorer into your workspace. It's really useful. And then also there's a delivery pathway to get your data that you order from an API delivered to a cloud container. So we have an integration with Google Earth Engine that you can send your data to a Google Cloud project that is connected with your Earth Engine account. And then what I'm really excited to talk to you all about today is Planet University and Planet Community. These are two really great platforms that I think the academic community is going to absolutely run with. They're both relatively new, so they've only been out for about a month and a half or so. But Planet University hosts a ton of introductory level trainings. And while they're introductory right now, as time goes by, we would love to build those out and potentially collaborate with the academic community to build out what pathways we should do, or host someone to come in and talk about the work that they do. And then we also have Planet Community, which is an online forum. So people can come in, ask questions. You can be as technical as you want. You can throw out ideas. It's a great way to communicate or engage with Planet employees, but also get engaged with other Planet users across the globe. So this is a great platform, and I'll talk a little bit more about these in a moment. Okay, so if you are going to download data, there are 5 main ways to do that. The most popular way, I would say, is Planet Explorer. And I'm not going to go too much in detail here because Corbin's going to give you an example of how to do that. But this is a great web application that you can pull up in your browser and preview images and then place your order. The cool thing about it is the ability to preview the images before you order them, so you can figure out whether or not you want to download that image or not. The plugins that I just mentioned, the QGIS and ArcGIS plugin, it's almost exactly like putting Planet Explorer into your GIS workspace. But one thing that I really like about these plugins is the ability to stream in and preview the imagery before you download it. And then that way you can see if the way that it interacts with any of your vector layers or other raster layers that you're working with. I know a lot of people are wanting to have like these base maps to create training data, so digitizing over different objects within the preview. This is something that you can do. You can just stream in these images and actually build out some training data by digitizing over some of the objects that you're interested in potentially classifying. Another great way to download data in bulk is through the Planet command line interface and the Planet Orders API. There's a ton of documentation on how to use these. We have a GitHub where you can go reference some of the how the code's been written and the structure of those. But it's a great way to automate some tasks in terms of downloading imagery automatically rather than going through Planet Explorer and picking things a little bit individually. But it's a great tool for people doing like landscape scale analysis or time series analyses. Great, and so Planet does have a few capabilities of visualizing data that I'd like to share with you. First being Planet Stories. So Planet Stories is a great platform where you can actually create a small video, like a time-lapse video or an image compare. And it's something that you can download or embed in an HTML file and share with people who don't have access to Planet data, or if you're trying to show the impact of a big environmental change, you can share that with anyone. They are posted publicly, so you can view our gallery as well to see some of these Planet stories. And I actually have one that I'd like to share with you all. It goes really fast. I'm going to slow it down just a little bit because I know it's kind of it almost feels a little jerky a little bit. But this is the Viedma Glacier in Argentina. And these are just images over the past 4 years. And you can see, and this is just a quick little video, and you can actually visualize how drastically the changes are occurring in this over this landscape. And so this is a great way to show and share any changes that are occurring. But it's a very powerful tool to be able to do something like this. I think this takes into account, I think 40 images. So you can use this in a very powerful way. I'll exit out of that real quick. All right. Oops. Let me get back to this. The other option is hosted data. So hosted data is a way for you to download or order planet imagery, but instead of you downloading it locally to your machine, it's actually being uploaded to Planet servers, and you can actually access it in Planet Explorer, as you can see right here. This is a simple NDVI over the recent Pakistan flooding. And one thing that's interesting about this is it's a great tool for visualizing your data. So you can perform these spectral indices, you can turn the image into a color infrared image and visualize it on the fly. It's something that you can access in your Planet Explorer account and take it with you as you go. So if you're trying to show someone something, it's easy to pull this up and show. The one caveat with this tool that I want to make clear to all the researchers in the room is that it's strictly a visual tool. So if you're trying to quantify or derive some values, unfortunately, this capability is not available in the current form of hosted data, but it's a great way to introduce people on how to use or how vegetation indices impact the way you're viewing some sort of environmental change or target object. Planet University, just mentioned this, but also a great place for you all to go. If you have a Planet account, it's free for you to use. We have, I think, over 30 trainings right now, but of course, we're trying to build that out and be a little more thorough in terms of specific applications. But right now, if anyone's trying to get an intro to remote sensing or an introduction to Planet, Planet Explorer overview, this is a great place to go in and learn a little bit more from the Planet team on how to use those platforms. So it's a great tool to use. It has a few interactive quizzes to kind of help you get engaged and retain information. And we also post live webinars and different events through Planet University as well. So if we ever host anything live, you'll be able to access that through Planet University. And I'll make sure to share some of these links with Zach, and he can share it with everyone as well. The other thing is Planet Community. So I highly encourage you to come in and join the community. I think we're doing a really big campaign over the next couple of weeks where we're going to start polling the community on different ideas that you have about our products, about our satellites, about the platforms that we have. So we would love to hear any ideas that you all have and how we can make Planet more robust and more useful for your use cases. But it's also a great way to go in, ask questions. So if you're familiar with things like Stack Exchange, Stack Overflow, we want you to be able to use Planet Community as a source of being able to find answers to your questions. So ultimately, what would end up happening is we hope that you Google your question on how to do something with Planet data, and it takes you straight to Planet Community for that answer. And it's a great place to start discussion, general discussion. So if you're an ag scientist or you're a volcanologist, you can ask a question about that specific application area and hopefully generate interesting discussion from other people in that area. Okay, bunch of resources to get started. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I'll make sure to share the link with Zach. And I'll share this presentation with you all, of course, as well. So you can click on the different links here. One thing I will highlight is the Developer Center right here. This is a great place. This is a great place to go and reference a lot of documentation on our APIs, our imagery specs. So anything technical that you need reference material for, this is a great place to go and find that information. Okay, so you've heard about what we're currently doing, but The next thing is our upcoming mission. So Planet is we definitely have some plans. So I'm excited to share with you some of those. First is Pelican. So Pelican, I mentioned SkySat before as being a 50 centimeter spatial resolution tasking satellite. Well, we have a new mission coming to replace SkySat. It's called Pelican, and it is going to have a spatial resolution of 30 centimeters, which is magnitudes higher than the 50 centimeters that we were getting with SkySat. And actually, one thing that you can see here is this is a SkySat image over the USS Midway in San Diego. And this is what a simulated Pelican image would look like. So you can see that the objects like the cars are becoming more crisp. You can really see a high level of detail. So those are upcoming. They're planned to be launched next year. And I think we'll start with a few to get things off the ground, but I think we're supposed to have up to 32 of these satellites in orbit. They'll be equipped with 7 spectral bands. I do not know what those bands are yet. I assume there will be RGB and IR, of course, but there are a couple of other bands that are anticipated to be included in this as well. And then our second mission, see if I can click on that, is Tanager. So Tanager being an endangered species in the tropics. And this is our hyperspectral sensor. So it is equipped with 400 spectral bands, ranging from 400 nanometers to 2500 nanometers. And it is going to have, it's in partnership with the Carbon Mapper program. So we're working alongside Carbon Mapper and JPL to create this satellite with the intention of being able to map out the Earth's methane emissions across the Earth. So of course, there's going to be many other applications with a hyperspectral sensor. So we're excited to be able to release this and work with the scientific community on how we can best utilize this information. It'll be at a 30-meter spatial resolution, so a bit lower resolution than the satellites that we've been talking about, but for hyperspectral, it still offers a lot of opportunity to explore. And then this is just kind of the breakdown of the spectral resolution as compared to the Dove satellites. There's going to be a lot more information involved. All right. Well, with that, I will pass it over to Corbin.
Awesome. Thanks, Austin, for that. So what I'm going to do now is just give you a couple of quick glimpses of some science that's being done with Planet data currently, and then give you a demo of Planet Explorer to give you a sense of how you can get in there and download some data quickly. Austin, if you could go to the next slide, please. So in terms of our science users, in our programs, we have 20,000 registered scientists that are able to access our data. And we have a repository of all of our peer-reviewed publications that are using Planet data, and we're now over 2,000 publications. And this is all kind of Austin's realm. So if I get anything wrong, Austin, just let me know. We have users at a bunch of different universities worldwide. And then in terms of with the government and the federal civilian agencies, they are heavy users of our data as well for scientific research, for operational use and things like that. And then we also have partnerships with NASA. So through the NASA commercial small sat data acquisition agreement, you can actually get access to Planet data through that as well. And we have similar agreements through ESA and DLR. We also partnership with NASA on their Frontier Development Lab every summer on machine learning and AI initiatives. And so this past summer, I was a faculty on a group looking at estimating fuel loads using multispectral data, which was really cool. And so through the science programs, we've had over five times the entire landmass of the Earth downloaded in square kilometers so far. And that's increasing every day. And so people are looking at all sorts of different problems with our data, from geology to agriculture. Climate change is obviously on the forefront of everything. But there's also people, and I'll show you in a second, looking at atmospheric science using our data, which is really interesting. Next slide, please, Austin. In terms of what you can and cannot do with the imagery that you download, it can't be used for operational use. It is strictly for research. And so you can do anything you want in terms of building out AI ML pipelines, doing research, using it in a class, having your students use it. But once you get into the commercial realm, that's kind of when you exit the educational license, and you would have to talk to us more about commercial license. Any derivative products that you create can be shared in conference presentations, journal publications, and media releases. But you're not allowed to put that original imagery into a repository for a publication, for instance. This is something that I've asked about a lot, because I know with open research and open data policies, you kind of hit a wall here. And so we are working on figuring out how this can be kind of worked around for researchers who have to publish their data in a repository. Next slide, please, Austin. And then, so if you do use Planet data, you have to cite it. Just reference this presentation for how to cite our data. Next slide, Austin. So some of the cool research that's going on. This is a group out of Duke University, actually, looking at PM 2.5 from orbit. And the air quality monitoring stations on the ground are really costly, not evenly distributed. And so having this everyday look where you could estimate something like PM 2.5 is really great for the team. And next slide. And oh yeah, Austin wants me to say that this is Dr. Mike Bergen's lab, if anybody is familiar with Dr. Mike Bergen. So they're using a CNN basically to identify features on the ground and planet imagery. So they're doing kind of like a building and road detection algorithm to then, over time, they can look at how the color changes of the features are relating to pollution levels, which is really, really cool. Next slide, Austin. And so this is just kind of a visual representation of what this looks like. So on the left is our color imagery, and they put it through their ML pipeline, and then they can map the estimated PM 2.5 at a 200-meter spatial resolution. Another instance of our data being used for something that we wouldn't normally think of is looking at parks on early childhood development. And so looking at green space in relation to childhood development, that's been just shown to improve, memory, academic performance, fewer behavioral problems. And so in Canada, this sounds really weird, but researchers monitored nearly 30,000 children from birth through kindergarten, and then using NDVI from Planescope and Landsat in the postal codes, they could estimate the green space exposure and found positive effects on childhood development. Next slide. And then this one's really cool. I was actually in Venice 3 weeks ago. So here we're looking at Venice and water quality changes during the COVID lockdown. So on the left is before the lockdown. You can see that there is the warmer colors are more grams per meters cubed of just stuff in the water. And you can see before, a lot warmer colors, there's more stuff in the water. And then during the lockdown, it gets to a lot cooler colors. So there's a lot less in the water. And then there's this beautiful true color image during the lockdown, just showing how nice the water looks there. I can say from 3 weeks ago, the water does not look that blue anymore. It's pretty brown. Next slide, Austin. And then I think this is the last one. This is the city of Chattanooga, just looking at urban forest canopy. So how are the green spaces connected? And just in general, the total green space in the Chattanooga area. And they were able to map this out using planet scope data. And Chattanooga itself is roughly 53% forested, which is just amazing. And they created this really beautiful graphic to illustrate that. And I believe, Austin, correct me if I'm wrong, this was the city of Chattanooga that did this study? Or was it a university?
It was actually a master's thesis project out of, I'm blanking on the name, the IGT lab. I worked with, it was Charlie Mix and Will Stewart, I want to say. They worked together on this project, and actually this is a poster from the Esri UC conference, which is pretty cool.
All right, next slide. Okay, so then also looking at just the effects of drought on forests, looking at the tree mortality connected to droughts. And this is specifically for eucalyptus trees. They were able to model the probability of tree mortality given certain drought conditions simply by using the satellite data to map it out. And so like just looking through the catalog of everything that we, like all of the science that we support with Planet is pretty awesome. Trying to go through all of the publications that we've supported is really hard. Some things that we haven't touched on here that are kind of near and dear to my heart is we do have stereo imaging capacity. And so with our high resolution, we can do stereo imaging. You can create digital terrain models off of that. You can also build digital terrain models off of our low res platform. There's some GitHub repos out there utilizing NASA AIM stereo pipeline to do that, which is really cool. In the future, if that gets really usable, then being able to look at topographic change over every day or every week would be super awesome. Next slide, Austin. You gave me a lot of science slides, Austin. So this one is kind of just connecting with an ongoing issue. Obviously, in Ukraine, there's been a lot of talk about just the amount of wheat they produce and how that will affect the global supply. NASA Harvest, who we've been working with for a while, has been looking at the wheat yields in Ukraine over the past, or they looked back over the past 3 years. And so we were able to see that like 20 or 15 to 30% of crops are now under Russian occupation. And so it's really interesting to be able to have that imagery, have that archive of imagery to go back and look at over time what is changing, who's in control. We can help with all of that. How many more science slides do we have, Austin? Nice. All right, cool. So if you want to scan this QR code, you can get to, you can read more about some science applications. And I think most of the people here hopefully have signed up for an account. What I'm going to do now is just load up Planet Explorer and just give you a quick overview of how to use it, and show off just some recent imagery from like Hurricane Ian, and also show off some of the high-res imagery just because it's really pretty. So Austin, next slide. I don't think there's anything else, right? Awesome. And there's Austin's email if you ever need to talk to him. Okay, let me share my screen.
I'll plug the email in the chat. Sorry for all the science slides.
No, you're good. Okay, so if you log in to planet.com/explore, this is what you'll be brought to. This is our kind of landing page for your account. And this is kind of where there's a lot of tools in here that you can use to access imagery. I'll first point out that you can upload your own area of interest. So if you have a shapefile, KML, GeoJSON, you can just upload it straight into here. And once you upload it, it will take you to that area of interest. You also have the option to draw an area of interest, which is what I'm going to do here for you. I'm just going to zoom in down to our favorite place, Jockey's Ridge. And you can just simply draw a box. And then once you draw that box, it will start loading daily planet scope. I'm just going to turn off SkySat for now because you don't have access to that. Then once you do that, it will load the most recent data first. So obviously we publish all of our cloudy images also. But back on October 1st, we had a fairly clear image. And you can change the dates that you're interested in. So it'll automatically load everything. Let's say you were interested in maybe back in 2018. I can't remember the hurricane back then. But let's just go August 1st through November 31st. And it will load that imagery for you and make that available for you to download. So the one thing to remember is over time, our archive has gotten more populated with imagery. So as you get closer to 2016, the nearly daily coverage probably isn't there. It's probably every other day or something similar to that. And so if you find an image that you like, you just have it selected over here. You'll click View Details. If you zoom out a little bit, it'll show you the full footprint of that image. You can then select a specific image out of that if you would rather. I'm just going to go ahead and show you how to download the full thing. So for both of these, I'm just going to go down here and click Order Scenes. And then this is where Austin was talking about having a download versus hosted. So if you click Hosted Analysis and Explorer, it will then populate that data into a folder on your Explorer account where you then can look at those 5 to 10 indices that we have available there for you to visualize it with. I'll just go ahead and do direct download. We'll just name this test. Hit continue, and this brings you to where you can choose the type of data that you want to download. So in terms of rectified assets, we have visual. This has like a super resolution algorithm applied to it. So we say you shouldn't do analysis with it, but you're free to do it with the imagery however you want. It just looks a little bit crisper, but that is RGB only. We also have surface reflectance, analytic radiance, and analytic radiance top of atmosphere calibration. And then we also have unrectified assets. It comes with an RPC text file if you want to do georeferencing yourself. If you're interested in looking at doing some stereo mapping, that's where you would download that. And so this is an image from 2018. This is before we had our 8-band data. Let me show you what it looks like with 8-band data. Options. So if I go to this one, October 1st, 2022. Name it test again. So you'll see that you have the option for 4-band or 8-band in surface reflectance and analytic radiance top of atmosphere. And then additionally, you have just the 8-band available and unrectified as well. And so let's just say I want to get surface reflectance 8 bands in GeoTIFF format. I'm going to go ahead and hit continue here. If you drew an AOI, you can clip your data to that AOI. We will pre-clip it before we send it to you. And then this harmonize tool, if you're using Sentinel-2 for any of your work, and you want the radiometry to be consistent between the planet data and Sentinel-2 so that you can make comparisons. We have a harmonized tool that will allow you to, it'll basically take the planet data and harmonize it to the Sentinel, the closest Sentinel-2 scene available in that date range. And then once you do that, you just hit order. And then that will populate. Essentially what happens now is that we pull the data out of cold storage, apply whatever tools you asked for, clipping, harmonize, and it'll take maybe 5 to 10 minutes to be available. You'll get an email to your account once it's available. You can click the link in your email. It'll just download it straight from your email. Or if you just sit here on your account, it will then show up and say, ready for download, and you can just click download here. And that's kind of like the basic order flow in Planet Explorer. Some of the other fun things that Austin mentioned, I'll just go ahead and zoom down into Jockey's Ridge. Say you're interested in looking at maybe how Jockey's Ridge has changed over time at the 3.5 meter data. If you come over to the right-hand panel and click the kind of stopwatch Pac-Man over here, hopefully it opens. That'll open Planet Stories, which is really just kind of fun to play around in if you're ever interested in an area. So let me move zoom here. So in Stories, you can pick your time frame. So I'm just going to go ahead and do 2017. Let's do October. And so we can get a full glimpse of kind of all the imagery available for Jockey's Ridge. Hit next. It'll then start pulling down all of the images available for that area. And if you load a 5-year time span, like I just did, it's going to take a long time. So what I usually do is I hit mosaics up here. And that will load our mosaic images for each month. So our mosaics are cloud-free, mostly cloud-free. I'm not going to say completely cloud-free, but it'll load the mosaics. And then if I hit, let's see, if I hit auto select and do 60, because I just saw at the top left, we have 60 images over that time frame, and hit OK. So now it's selecting each of those images, and then hit next. We now have a time lapse. And usually the first time you play it, it's a little glitchy because it's trying to load everything. And then you can, once you're happy with it, you can hit finish and it'll publish it to our website. You can put that link in any presentation you have. You can, it's really quite useful and quick. Let's see. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to save this one because Jockey's Ridge is awesome. We'll just hit publish. And if you're ever interested, also just go to the Planet Stories webpage. Everyone's Planet Stories are on there, and you can just go look at everything that everyone's ever created. Okay, so let's go back here. I wanted to show off some imagery from Hurricane Ian. So our normal kind of latency from image collection to being available to you online is about 23 hours. So I'm gonna draw a new area of interest down here. The Sanibel Island Causeway was super damaged in the storm. So I was really curious about the day after or 2 days after it happened, what that would look like. So here we are, September 23rd. You can kind of see, I'm going to go ahead and turn off our streets. So you can see it's there. Everything is good. The bridge is fully intact. September 27th, 28th, about when the storm came through. And then once we get the first really good clear image, you can see that the road is completely destroyed in multiple places, and really kind of striking. The other thing to notice is just the sheer difference in the watercolor here. There's a huge freshwater influx coming into the system. Kind of like what Austin showed off the coast of Italy with those big sediment plumes, but here we're probably getting a lot of dissolved organic matter. It's quite striking. And so this data is available to you usually within 24 hours after it is captured. Another nice thing that I like to do is if you have a search that you like, say you have your AOI, and you have, if you just enter your date range, if you don't put an end date, say, or if you put your end date as the 7th, you can save this search, hit no end date. And once you save that, every time new imagery is available for that location, it will then email you and you can then go on and download it. And some of the filters you can apply on the searches might come in handy for that. So say you're only interested in cloud cover that's like 5% or less over your AOI. I'm sure it's gonna probably, so here we have, not too much cloud cover. You can save that in your search as well, so that you're basically notified anytime new cloud-free imagery is available for your field location, your river of interest, anything like that. So now I'm going to show you some things that you unfortunately don't have access to, but it's something that is really fun to show off. Just the high resolution imagery is pretty spectacular. Just do a new AOI, reset the whole thing. My sky set is not showing up. Okay, so I'm gonna go where I know there's sky set imagery, because I tasked it myself. So I will say the nice thing about working at Planet is that although I work with customers every day, and that's like my official job title, they encourage scientists to continue doing science. And so one thing that I've done is I have taken that to heart and started tasking satellite images for projects that I have. Of course, it's not loading. We're gonna refresh. But the high resolution images are pretty striking. They almost match what you would get out of the NAPE program. So if you're kind of dependent on getting NAPE imagery, but it's like yearly or not even yearly in some states, you can get high res imagery. And that's just something that, you can work it into a grant if you're interested in tasking some images or tasking some stereo images. I'm not going to try to sell anything to you. That's not my job. That's Austin's job. Austin, I think you broke my Explorer. Oh, here we go.
I feel like this only happens in demos, right?
It does.
Live demos at that.
Okay, so I got it working. So these are two SkySat collects that I submitted for the maze or the for Canyonlands National Park. I did some field work out here during my PhD, and I have an ongoing project out here. And it's I'm just going to zoom in until it tells me that I'm over zoomed. But it's just spectacular. The kind of how fast we can task an image and have it delivered to you is also great. You can do, if you're interested in tides, for instance, you can get tasks that are only done at low tide or only at high tide, and things like that. It's pretty awesome. And the great thing about the high res is you can get access to all of these scenes, which are kind of everything before we mosaic it. So these are the scenes. If you play around in Agisoft Metashape, this is a really fun thing to see if you can finagle it to get stereo, but we can also shoot these in stereo. So we can shoot these images with a convergence angle of 30 to 50 degrees, and things like that. So that kind of rounds out the demo for Explorer. I think everyone here probably is pretty good at figuring things out like this. It's pretty intuitive. The APIs are also great. We've put together some Jupyter notebooks on my team where we're hitting NOAA stations for low tide times at certain stations, then grabbing those times, searching our catalog for those dates and times, and only downloading imagery for when there's maximum low tide. And you can do all of those things with the API, and it's pretty cool. So I'll stop there. I just realized I'm 3 minutes over. If there's any questions, feel free to ask. I'll stick around for a while too if you want to talk about Planet some more, or if you have anything else to chat about.
All right. Thank you, Corbin and Austin. So, and we'll wrap it up here. But if you've got any questions, I think Corbin wants to stick around for a few minutes. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Corbin and Austin.
Thank you.
Thanks. You guys are doing it. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Felt weird sitting behind the desk.
Yeah. Ergonomics of the classroom are a little. Fine. So.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
I'll see you around. Yeah, I'm gonna be here 2 weeks from now.